My first guest is a director and a producer. She is most known for her show Chasing Hollywood, which I'm sure she told you guys all about earlier on our panel. She's an expert in content creation. She's been in the business for hella long. So, she's an expert, and she's a wealth of knowledge that she's here to share with us all the way from Cali, right, LA? So she's here from all the way across the country, which is a very special opportunity to hear from her and meet her. Please give a round of applause for Miss Tizzy Green. My second panelist is a very, very bright, ambitious, talented director of content and partnerships. When I first met this young lady, I was introduced by a friend, John Jackson, who is the co-founder of Blavity. Some of you may know him. He is a very profound and bright thought leader, and he surrounds himself with people that are similar to him. So when he introduced me to this young lady, I said, yeah, I definitely want to get to know her. I love what she's doing with digital platforms and kind of helping black creators grow and get access to capital and to a larger audience. And so I was like, yeah, that's all about what I'm trying to do right now. So yeah, put me on. But yeah, so working with her has been great. She's the reason that we're able to have a third day of our conference. So clap it up for I1 Digital and having a third day of our conference and their support. She is the director of content partnerships at I1 Digital, and she also is the lead force in their new platform, A Space for Creators. So she'll tell you more about that as we go. But please give a round of applause for Miss Alexis Cummings. I'll let you sit here. I'll sit here.
Great intro, thank you.
No doubt. Do we have a microphone for our lovely guests? Thank you. Cool, so you guys can share that and I'll moderate with this one, cool?
Sounds good.
Cool, so just to start, I would love for you guys to talk really, really briefly about your role at your companies and what makes you really excited about the work that you do.
Sure. So my role at I1 Digital is that I lead our content partnerships division. And so it's a new capability to the organization in which we're starting to work external to the company on video projects. So essentially, the video landscape is vast at this point. There's a lot of people in the space in terms of the traditional YouTubes, Netflix, streaming platforms, et cetera. And so given that we're a digital business, in order to do business well, we need to figure out how to play in that space. And so I was tasked late 2017 with figuring out how we're going to do that. And so a large part of it is we are a Black-owned media company, so we don't have the same budgets as some of the people that I just mentioned. And so it's kind of figuring out ways to leverage our resources, build meaningful relationships with people, and partner in ways to be able to reach our goals, but then also figure out ways to help other people reach theirs as well. And so that's kind of how this role has morphed itself in terms of what content partnerships is. And yeah, the simple answer is I do licensing and acquisition. So I identify content creators, largely independent content creators, and I create opportunities for them within our space, but then also identify ways to be able to source their produced materials, possibly fund them if that makes sense for both parties. That's it in a nutshell.
Tiz?
So I have my own production company, Majestic 9 Films, and when Alexis had the bright idea to start a space for creators, she reached out to me, for a partnership, to see if I had content, and it's a great outlet for independent filmmakers. What else?
What makes you really excited about the work that you do?
Oh, I mean, it's able to touch people. That's my whole goal in creating the type of content that I create. Yeah. So yeah.
So being able to touch people is your inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to touch people in a way that, like Tupac said, he may not be the one to make the change, but he'll spark the mind to do it. That's pretty much.
No, that's one of my favorite quotes. I may not change the world, but I guarantee I will spark the mind that does. Yeah. That's real. So we're talking about A Space for Creators. Alexis, tell us more what A Space for Creators is.
Yes, I mean, I'm very literal in how I name things. So a space for creators is just that. It's a space for creators.
It's just that.
That's what it is. But yeah, so essentially, like I was mentioning, we're a digital publishing company. So we have 9 brands. A Space for Creators is the 9th brand. So Bossip, Hip Hop Wired, Global Grind, Cassius, Madame Noir, Hello Beautiful, News One. And so my initial role was to be programming content across all of those brands. And if you're familiar with any brand building exercise, you know that it's very specific, like exactly what it is that you talk about, who you're trying to reach. And that limited my opportunity to work with a wide array of people because they had to fit within those spaces. And so when I was thinking about, our opportunity to make impact in the content landscape, and then knowing that we're up against mainstream media platforms and we want it to be different in the space,
How are you guys different from a YouTube or a Netflix?
I think we're different in the sense that we don't have mandates. So something Tizzy mentioned earlier today was around like the mandates that a lot of publishers have for the type of partners that they want to work with, in terms of them having a voice that they want to articulate and leverage a creative individual to be able to do that. We do that, within our space. We have 2 TV platforms. We have those 8 brands that I mentioned. And so if we're doing something new and fresh in the space, how we're different is that we don't have mandates in terms of what types of stories we want to tell. Very specific. I mean, we're a Black media company first. We're moving into a multicultural space, so that's the main parameter. So as long as you're coming from that lens, there's space for you here. And so I think in that space, that's where we're different, but we also are serving as the go-between from where you currently are and where you're trying to go. And so
Do we have any content creators in the building? Okay.
Hey,
good,
y'all.
good. Hey, y'all. Right. Y'all better get her number. So specifically, what type of content creators are you looking for? Because I think we're all, even with Instagram or social, we're creating content, and people who actually invest in their content that want to create long form or short form content, there's so many different genres, right? So is there a particular type of creator that you're looking for?
So in terms of like genre, no, because it kind of goes into that space of I want people to be able to create what they want to create and tell the stories they want to tell. What I do look for is intentionality. So I think if you were here for the first half and you kind of listened to Tizzy and Kevin and them talking about Chasing Hollywood and why they created it, that's what I look for first. So sometimes I don't even necessarily need to see the actual finished product. If we can have a conversation and you can tell me about what you're looking to do and what impact you want to make. I'm very big on driving social change through narrative, and people need to be able to speak to what change they want to make and kind of know what voice they're trying to own. And so that's kind of where I start first. Obviously, we do have certain formats in which we want to work with in terms of like length. Length, I guess, is the biggest piece.
Do people engage with long form content anymore?
They do. I think it's more, again, because like I have to look at it from the lens of who we are in the space currently. So right now, most people consume our content on mobile and online, like digital devices, which means they have a shorter attention span. So content needs to be shorter in length. We are looking to scale our business in terms of looking at how we can kind of do more OTT, so over the top, which is like the Rokus, things of that nature, so people can cast to televisions. We have a partnership with YouTube now, so like that's facilitated our opportunity to be able to move into that space. And so once we do that, we can increase the length of the content because now the consumption behavior is different for the audience. But while we're still largely reaching people on the go, the content has to kind of follow behavior in order for it to perform well.
As a content creator, I've found, like we do a series called Shine Hard Conversations. It's on our YouTube channel. And I've done interviews with tons of Black millennial leaders from different industries. The mission is to tell their story and to really highlight success and control the narrative, like Alexa said. But what I found is that when we first started, we were doing long-ass interviews. They were like 45 minutes on YouTube, and the views were like low. And so we decided to like chop the fluff and just make it like really, really strong points. The editing got better, and we found a sweet spot around 15 to 20 minute length for our interviews, and our engagement shot up. So that has been a really good sweet spot. So as creators, the attention span is short. So 15, 20 minutes is a sweet spot that I found. I want to share that with you guys.
Yeah, and I want to, I think it's a good point for Tizzy to jump in too, because it kind of showed up in our relationship. So she mentioned earlier, like their vision for Chasing Hollywood was to be like an hour-long program. And she came to me actually because she was looking for opportunities on the linear side of our business, so like TV One, and we have a new network called Clio TV. And so a large part of what I'm trying to do, obviously, is facilitate people's ability to get to what that goal is. And sometimes that's through promotion and marketing and like just people being aware that what you're doing exists. Because sometimes, well, this in the way that we are now, people want to see that you've built something for yourself in order for them to want to invest in you. And so it was kind of like, I'm interested in helping you do that, but it can't be an hour-long piece of content. Like, I can't work with that. So I could just let her kind of talk a bit about what our process was in terms of like, you know, the revisions she had to make and how she had to kind of like, you know, adjust to those kind of standards.
Yeah, so remember when we told y'all in the first half that it was like 3 hours worth of conversation? You know, when we filmed it, Chasing Hollywood, we literally had to get that into a 10-minute window, what you guys saw on the screen today. So we pretty much, in the editing process, you know, we all pulled what we thought was the most impactful, or some of the most, because you didn't see all of it, but most impactful stories, and, you know, intertwine them together to get what you saw today. But to keep people's attention, you know. But yeah, that's pretty much the process. We would love to have a 1-hour show, you know. That's why I said it's great for you guys to follow us and share and all of that good stuff. So this is like a teaser. So that's why Space for Creators and what they're doing over there is brilliant, really, especially for content creators, because we're literally using this space as, you know, marketing the show. So when it does get picked up, people know about it already, you know.
And I want to add something to that too, just to go to the point about like what makes us different from a YouTube or a Netflix. What she just described is essentially called a proof of concept. So a lot of times for networks to pick you up, they need you to have proof of what it is that you're actually trying to pitch to them. And there's a lot of money that goes into creating proof of concepts. And there isn't currently a space that allows you to monetize off of a proof of concept in order for you to continue to create and build what you're trying to do. And so that's kind of the business that we're looking to create here. Is we know that there's a lot of money that goes into content that literally essentially becomes dead content because you can't use it. And it just gets shelved either because it didn't get picked up or like, you know, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, that's been a challenge for us because like, we invest so much of our resources in creating a high quality conversation, and then we have this amazing product, but we're having a hard time getting it out to people and people getting eyes on our product, essentially.
Yeah, and I think something to just be mindful of, you know, if you are especially an independent content creator, because my background is more in branded content, so we get huge budgets because a brand is giving it to us, and this is me now educating myself on what it's like for people to take on that financial burden.
That actually sparks my next question, but I'm gonna let you finish, but that's
Yeah.
a very interesting dynamic there.
So what I wanted to say though, just to close it, was just when you know that you're creating something that is a proof of concept, you're not gonna put that $1 million budget behind it because you need to create something. So in marketing, because that's my background as well, it's called an MVP, so minimal viable product. What can you do for the least amount of money to prove that you can do it if you had the budget? And so when you think about it that way, you know, somebody like me and what my role is in the space, I'm not the person that's going to give you the $1 million to go create this, you know, hour-long thing that you're trying to create. But I am the person that can give you the money to create your proof of concept so that you can then attract the people who will give you that larger amount of money.
The big bag.
Yes, and so I just think that's something to note, just because I have a lot of conversations with people who are new to the space, and they feel like they have to create a product that looks like it's on HBO when they haven't gotten the HBO deal yet, and that's your money that you may not get back. And then just, you know, as we continue this conversation around the business of content, you can't really make that money back in a digital environment. It's less likely to happen. So just kind of being mindful of how you're allocating resources, which you probably can speak more to than me.
Yeah, managing your budget is a major challenge, especially as an entrepreneur or startup. How many of you guys have a 9-to-5 right now? And then how many of you guys have like a side hustle or a business or a creation that you're on the side working with? Right, so I feel like as Black millennials and really people in general, we all should have additional streams of income. You're not ever going to become a millionaire just working your 9-to-5. You have to find another way to generate income that you can reinvest into other businesses and assets that can grow. So for me as an entrepreneur, I started in 2014. I had no money, but hella time. So I literally did all the jobs. I was the videographer, the editor, the transcriber, the marketer, the web developer, and I learned how to do all these things because I didn't have any money, but I just had time. So I learned how to do the jobs. And then as I started to create, I had a proof of concept, and I started to get traction. People were saying, yo, what you're doing is good. Keep going. And as I kept going, I'd have more people who would donate their time or donate their money to what I was doing, and I was able to grow it that way, and I've continued to do that. But even when you do have time and resources, you have to be very strategic in how you allocate them, because if you spend too much on one thing, you can easily go bankrupt on yourself in the long run. So that's a good point. But what I do want to say is that independent creators, I have all the freedom in the world to do whatever I want to do. But on your side, when you're working for the corporate structure, there's so much red tape when you're trying to roll out a new platform. So talk about the challenges that you face in the corporate structure versus someone who just wants to start their own thing whenever.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could speak to just making a space for creators what it is, and sort of like kind of how content partnerships is sort of pushing against some of that red tape. I'm really intentional about being equitable and being fair and allowing people to maintain their independence, because I know that's important to this generation of content creators because of the intentionality behind the projects and because it's so personal to people. And just wanting, I think people have deserved the right to be attached to that win or that upside. And so, of course, to structure that deal legally in terms of how we do business is not typically how business is done, especially in this space. And so a large part of this journey, especially the first year, was all operational in terms of like, how do we shift our entire business in order to support this vision? I have conversations every day with legal. You know, a lot of people don't come with representation to some of these conversations. And so
We can't afford representation because we're just a startup creator.
I mean, well, some people, I mean, that's when it comes down to partnerships, right? So there are different types of partnerships. There's partnerships you have where it's in kind. You can do things where there's barters. I mean, a large part of even what the partnerships look like with some of the content partners I work with is very much in barter in terms of like, this is what I have and this is what you have, and like, how can we make this thing work together and how are we in it together, which is that equitable piece in terms of like, you know, we do 50-50 rev shares. Like there's everything is kind of like, we're cutting it down the middle, but that means what are you bringing in order for that to be fair to us?
So basically it's a licensing deal, but you guys chop the revenues in half.
Yes, because we're licensing and not acquiring. So
Can you demystify the term licensing and what that means when it comes to content?
yeah, sure. So typically people do acquisitions. So you have a content series I think is amazing, and I just purchase it from you, and now I own it in perpetuity. And that's typically how business is done for the most part. Licensing is you created a series I think is amazing. I want to see you win. Can you give me the rights to distribute it in our space? And we kind of do different types of licensing deals. So we do exclusive and non-exclusive. So, and we do windows of exclusivity. So, you know, in the case of Chasing Hollywood, it was more of a, we want to be able to be the ones to premiere this on our platform, and we need an exclusive window. But after our window is over, you can go to whoever wants to pick it up, and if they want to honor the terms we have, like if it switches to non-exclusive for the back half of the 6 months, then maybe it can be on our platform and somebody else's platform. And so that, again, gives more flexibility for that long-term goal that I was mentioning a lot of people come to us with in terms of we're not the final destination. And so with that in mind, I don't want to preclude you from being able to chase, you know, those other opportunities or seek out those other things. I'm trying to think what my point was, though, how we got to that piece.
Well, you were just breaking down the mechanics of licensing, more or less, and I think that was the answer to the question.
Yeah, okay.
Cool. Tizzy, how do you feel about licensing? And have you licensed content? Have you had anyone buy the rights to any of your work? And is it a good thing for creators, or should we be hesitant about diving into that pool?
Well, the most important thing is ownership. So I own all my work, and I love licensing because you can license to multiple people. It may be different time periods, you know.
But you have to negotiate the details.
Yeah, you have to negotiate the details. Like in some of my other projects, it's like it's longer work. It may be a feature film or something like that. In a case like that, like your license may be 30 years, You know, that's how Hollywood works. But I would say licensing is the way to go because you're able to put your content on multiple platforms and collect checks from all of them if you about the money.
Yeah,
But
it should be.
yeah, I love the setup that we have with I1 Digital because, like Alexis was saying, we have they have exclusive rights for a certain period of time, but it's pretty much like open marketing for us, like free advertising. So yeah, and now we can go somewhere else and it can still live on their network and it can still live somewhere else. And I mean, licensing is the way to go.
So I want to talk a little bit more about how you guys got to this seat on this stage because, yeah, we're talking about the business of content, but I think there's some people in the audience that might aspire to work in content partnerships at some point or be a producer director. So can you talk about what your path to your position was and any gems that you learned along the way?
Is yours more linear than mine? Because
Especially as Black women, I think that something that can resonate.
Well, my path was not linear. So I started in media planning and buying. Well, first I started in copywriting.
Where'd you go to school?
West Florida. It was like a small commuter college. It wasn't like a thing
What'd you study?
like that.
I mean, you got a degree. It was
Yeah,
definitely a thing.
but you know what I mean? Like, it ain't like I'm about to be up here like,
You
oh,
paid
what's
for
this?
it.
Yeah, still paying for it. So what happened for me, though, was an internship opportunity. So it was an internship opportunity through a program called MAPE, Multicultural Advertising Internship Program, and they're one of the biggest facilitators for creating diversity within the advertising industry. And so I had professors that kind of took a liking to me and sort of supported me in that journey. And so I wanted to be a copywriter because I was always like in a creative discipline. But I realized really early into just interning that I'm not like, what is it? I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit, like for real. So I'm like, I can't do creativity for work. Like that's not my gift or my ability. So I wanted to understand the business of things. And at the time I was told that media planning is where all the money goes. So if you don't know media planning and buying, essentially.
Yeah, demystify that. I hear that a
Yeah.
lot, and I think there's a lot of vague terms around that.
Yeah, so essentially it's a component of advertising, and so media planners are the ones that get the budget. So if a brand has $1 billion they want to spend on advertising that whole year, the agency of record is the one that figures out how to spend that money for them in the most effective way to reach who they want to reach in order for them to be able to sell their products. And so I started in planning, which is essentially, here's this big budget. How are you allocating this across different media channels? So paid channels, earned channels, owned channels, digital, TV, radio, like that whole split. Creating partnerships with media publishers. So like I did a lot of work with Essence Festival and things like that. So all those things happen, but in that seat, you pretty much are a receptor. Like a lot of people want what you have, so you don't necessarily have to kind of hunt for your opportunities, and I wanted that ability or skill set, and so I went to public relations, which is very much like you're begging and pleading everybody every single day to do like a little thing for you, and so that taught me a lot in terms of knowing how to position myself and position what I had to offer to somebody in a way that they would see value in it in order to be able to create mutual wins. From there, I landed in the Urban One universe, which is what I1 Digital is a part of, and that was more because somebody who saw me really early into my career saw my skill set and what I was bringing to the table and wanted to build an agency within a media company. And at that time, I had always wanted to work in a Black space because I had always worked in traditionally white spaces, and I wanted to do things that reflected who I was and kind of the things that I cared about, and so this is kind of where I landed. And so within that role, I was doing strategic partnerships, which essentially I was working with these big brands who wanted to reach Black audiences and wanted to figure out how to leverage our platforms in order to do so. So I was doing that. And then being a millennial, I'm a cable cutter. Like I was very big on like digital spaces and just like, why aren't we working with Black and Sexy TV? Why aren't we working with like, all these independent creators and like, how can we forge relationships with them? And so when the opportunity came in the video capacity in which I serve now, it was just kind of like, well, you like doing this stuff, and like every time we talk to you, you know who the next big whatever is on like YouTube or whatever, and so it was just kind of like, here's this thing, figure out how to leverage all of your experience in order to make this work for you and work for us. And so that's kind of how I got where I am.
Is this the place that you're gonna call home, or do you have aspirations to go into another role at some point?
So I'm still working through that personally. I tell a lot of people, like, I feel like this is service work for me in the sense of, like, I was put here as servitude for other people. And so I've been able to enter into this space without my own desire. So typically people who are in development roles maybe aspire to be like an EP or a director, or like, so I would, in that, if I was coming from that place, I would have a lot more that I'm projecting into like the partnerships and the ways that I'm structuring deals and the way that I work with people, because there's something I want to see out in the world and I want to leverage another person to do that. Because I personally have no interest in creating content. It's more of, I have a lot of friends who are creatives, and I also experienced when I was in the creative capacity, like the first thing somebody said to me was like, "Is your will broken?" And I was just like, this isn't what I'm trying, you know what I mean? I'm not really about this. I'm a Pisces, like I just can't, be like in around this kind of energy. And so for me, like I worked really closely in the role before this with the branded content team, and I saw that they weren't necessarily always creating the work that they wanted to put out into the world. And so it was kind of like, I was a big support for them, like changing my hours to work when creatives work, which is usually late nights. They brainstorm and like, are always talking and everything. Like, you know what I mean? I'm more like, let's land the plane. Like, what are you really trying to do? And that's just not how certain creative people work. And so it's kind of like, I understood that I could speak both languages, and I was in a unique position to be of support and help to the creative community. And so I'm kind of in this space now. I don't know what, after this looks like for me. Right.
No, I kind of live by the philosophy that it's like a football field and there's a fog around it. All you can see is 100 yards. So you have to just do your best job to get the ball to the goal line, and then the next 100 yards will become visible, and you move that way and just do your best with what you can control. But Tiz, what led you to becoming a director? Tell us a little bit more about your journey as a Black woman in film and entertainment.
Ooh, as a Black woman, see, that's a whole nother
Well,
conversation.
I know, because there's not a whole lot of us there, so I want to hear what that struggle has been like.
Okay. So again, I came in through an internship program as well. It was the diversity internship program at Columbia TriStar, which is a part of Sony Pictures, and it was very. Ooh, I've never spoken about this publicly.
Yeah, we got this on tape too, content.
Okay. So, the program I'm sure was created because of affirmative action. So you get looks from that just off the strength, right? And being Black and female at that, that's two shots.
That is.
Being Black, female, and from the hood too, that's like 3.
Wait, where are you from?
I'm from South Central Los Angeles.
South Central LA.
Yeah.
While drinking your juice in the hood. Don't be a menace.
Something like that. But it was a challenge for me because even though I knew both worlds, like I grew up in the hood, but I had great mentors, and my dad owned the business.
Yeah. What was your first film?
That I saw?
First film that you saw. That's a good question too.
Well, the film that made me want to get into the business was Jaws. Yeah, Steven Spielberg is my favorite director. Yeah, but anyway, it was challenging. So in that program, like 7,000 applicants applied for the position. Only 5 of us were chosen, and I was the only female. And it was probably 2 other Black. No, it was me and 1 other Black person, and the rest were Latino. So, it was really tough because my demeanor, I don't know why, sometimes.
What about it?
People can tend to be a little intimidated. And especially people of non-color, because I like to speak my mind.
I hear you.
And
that Black girl magic, they weren't ready for it.
That Black girl magic is powerful.
Yeah.
And Jesus' touch is real powerful.
Hello, it's Sunday. Hello, somebody.
Yeah. So I had to adjust because back when I worked at Sony, way back in the day,
It was probably the same
It
amount of
wasn't
black
a-
people then as it is now.
yes, it wasn't. Well, it's a little more
Oh,
now.
it's a few more now.
But it wasn't a lot of us. It was literally a handful of us, and I'm talking about it was two different lots. Like you had the Culver City lot, and you had the big Sony lot with the really big sound stages on. And when you see somebody, it's like,
Yeah, y'all connect, right? Y'all
you know
friends
what I mean?
immediately,
It's like Celie and her sister in The Color Purple. Like, you know what I mean?
Yo,
But
same
that's
way.
my favorite movie from
Same
Steven
way. When I'm at
Spielberg.
Google, I see a black person. I'm like, yo, what's your email? Hit me up. We gotta set a meeting up. It's like automatic.
I mean,
We're like connected.
there was a situation where you know, they tried to fire me. Wow. Because you know sometimes we have certain people just because they hang around our culture, they think you know.
How you gonna get fired on your day off?
Oh, it wasn't my day off, but but you know, it was one young lady and she came at me kind of sideways, and you know I'm not used to that.
Southside LA.
So at first it was like, you know, yeah, I need you to do this and this and this. I was working in the talent department on the Donnie and Marie show, so go figure.
Okay.
Yeah, it was probably me and like 2 or 3 other black people on that
Got
show.
it. So, what was your first film that you created?
Wait, let me finish, because
Oh.
this is important, brother.
Oh, okay.
Like, they got to know this if they trying to be in
Get
the
us
big
there. We
leagues.
waiting on you, baby. We
Like,
here.
in the big leagues, it's a different world than the independent world. Okay? So, it's like, I'm talking to her, and she's pointing her finger and doing all of this, and I said, whoa, don't come at me like that, you know? Yeah. So that turned in from me to like, oh my God, Tizzy's threatening me.
Oh,
so
yeah,
first
yeah.
she was my boyfriend black and
Yeah.
this and this and that, to oh my God,
Oh, she pulled
Tizzy's
that on you.
threatening me, okay?
Yeah, you gotta be careful. They flip.
But yeah, so it's like I had to learn how to play chess and not checkers, and that's what I wanted to get to, because they're looking for us to fail. They don't want us to create our content. They want to, you know, own our content. You know,
That's
and
something
put
that
their
frustrates
stamp.
me a lot too. Like workplace politics, it really frustrated me to the point where I wanted to become an entrepreneur so badly, because I just got tired of playing games at work. Because to me, my idea of work is to create something that matters to people that care, to change the world, to impact people. And when you're at a job and everyone's in your email and passive aggressive and all these games and race and issues are coming up, it's like, y'all distracted me from the purpose of what I'm trying to do on this earth. So I definitely understand your frustration, but I think as creators, that gives us a space to own our time and own our work and choose who we want to work with. So that's something that's been special for me.
Yeah, and I want to just add to that a misnomer. A lot of people who work in like traditionally white corporate spaces feel like the wind is going to a black corporate space. And the thing is that at the end of the day, color is not even really the big factor. It's all about understanding people and people dynamics. Because the person that made you mad, that was like some white lady who you felt was privileged and entitled or whatever, is going to come in the same form as some black man that feels like he's privileged and entitled or whatever the case may be. And so it's really like when you can just take the emotion out of it, take all the biases we come with to the table, because sometimes we're projecting into situations that's not really what the situation even is. It's more so just understanding that this is just how people act. If somebody feels threatened by you because you show yourself a certain kind of way that they feel like maybe they don't possess that quality, that's going to give them a certain energy towards you, and it has nothing to do with you being black or whatever the case may be. It has something to do more with what they're dealing with and why they feel the way they feel in that setting. But I think it is a thing, like when we get in spaces where we all look like each other, it's kind of like we want to have this kumbaya moment around like, yeah, everybody's against us, and like they, but it's literally like, you have to look at every single instance and person as like their own thing, and just know that's how people are. And I think that's the chess
That's
part
what
of it.
I was
Yes.
just getting ready to say that, and that's the chess. Yes, that is the chess part of it, because me coming from the hood, I was exposed to somebody get up in your face, whoop, 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 but then me growing, I had to learn that that's her issue, and it's a person issue, and it's not a color issue. And so it's important to know how to play chess. It's important to own your content. It's so important to own your content because that gives you the leverage to negotiate and say, no, this is what I want my brand to be. You know, it gives you more power to for them not to turn your content into what they want it to be. You know.
So I want to bring this home with two more questions. My first question is for Tiz. What advice do you have for the next generation of young Black content creators, and what's the mindset of, you know, getting recognized and monetizing your content?
I think especially for like the millennials and the younger generations, I think it's really vital. Like, hear me on this, please. I think
Write this down. Put this in your phone.
I think it's
IG story moment.
I think it's really vital to really tap into yourself and who you are and your authenticity, and do not be afraid to show the world who you are, because right now we just have a bunch of robots and mumble. And that's with music, but that can happen in the film world too. Like, it's cool to be inspired by people, but when you're telling your own stories, nobody can tell your story like you can. You know?
And your story is valuable.
Your story is valuable. It's you know, like I said earlier, somebody can relate. You know, somebody's going through the same thing you're going through.
What I've learned from my journey is like being authentic and transparent about my mom passing away when I was younger. My dad died last year. Struggles that I've had in entrepreneurship. Being transparent in those moments with my audience and my community has strengthened the connection that I have and the support that I have, because people can relate to what you're going through. You're not the only one that's going through what you're going through. And to have the strength and the courage to share that story, it means everything to the people who are experiencing that. So I definitely co-sign
So
that.
that's why owning your content is important. Because look, in the world we're in right now, it's two sides to it. It's literally two sides to the coin. It's good and it's evil. And you have to sit down and ask yourself, what side are you on? Because once you figure that out and you're creating your content, that's the energy that you're going to be putting out into the world. You know?
Heard
so
you.
if you want, if you're creating content to create change, make sure you're creating content from the depths of within yourself.
Heard you.
You know?
By a show of hands, how many people would be interested in having their content licensed by iOne Digital? Okay, we got a few hands in here, about 5 or 6. That's good. So Alexis, my question for you is, what steps do we take in order to get our content licensed? What's the process look like from here? What's next steps?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a conversation. You know what I mean? Like, I don't always look approachable, I've heard, but I'm very approachable.
You all right sometimes. You got to stay on your good side.
But yeah, like, I mean, I'm definitely always down for a conversation, like, just to talk about it. You know, Dorian, me and him met at ABFF this year. And it was kind of like one of the questions I asked him is like, what do you want, you know, in the situation? And a lot of people don't have the answer to that, you know, because I'm very like, I think I come out differently in this space. Like, I'm very like, we can have however many conversations you need to have for us to figure it out. And I think it's because we're building and I don't have that many people that I'm speaking to. But like, you know, once you get to the point you want to talk to like a network executive at another place, you may only have one meeting. And so it's kind of like a part of, I guess, from a content creator standpoint, in terms of owning your voice, the next step after that is like knowing what you want, what you want that voice to serve for you and like in the world, so that when you have a conversation, you kind of have an understanding of like what your boundaries are and like, you know, where you can draw the line in the sand and like where you have flexibility. Because a lot of what it is working with us is flexibility. There's going to be things that you are like steadfast on, like this thing has to happen. And I need to know that as soon as possible so that we can always figure out how we get back to that goal, because there's going to be things that being your line means that other things can happen, you know, if you're going to partner with us. Because, I mean, partner is like the real word in all of this. So, yeah, I mean, I think have a conversation. You can reach out.
Can we shoot you an email?
Yeah, like, so we have a general email, which is a space for creators at i1digital.com. You know, we always are monitoring that. If you come up to me, I can like give you my information. This is being live streamed, so I don't want to just put it out here on the internet. But in person,
feel
you know,
you.
we can like talk or whatever, and I'll give you my information. I'm a millennial, so I'm on Instagram at Southernly, so Southern LY. You can slide in my DMs because I slide in other people's DMs to get content
Yo,
opportunities.
I check my
so-
DMs more than my emails sometimes. I ain't gonna lie.
No, that's literally like when I was in PR, most of my pitches or that I actually got pick up on is because I hit up somebody on Twitter. You know, nobody's checking emails, so it's kind of like, you know, as long as you
Also,
come
LinkedIn
correct.
is a great resource as well.
Yeah, like, so social media, definitely. So feel free to reach out to me and like we could just have a conversation.
Cool. So we're gonna open it up for 3 questions from the audience. Make it quick. This is the time to start thinking about it. My man right there, stand up, say your name, and ask your question.
Hello, ladies. Thank you for joining us. My name is Krishan Jerome, business pro, and we have virtual reality.
VR, special.